I think it's just incredibly stark, the kind of psychological detachment that whether it's a put that is or seem to be an inevitable feature of occupation.
Now, from one Middle East war to another, 23 years ago, and some salutary lessons about what follows the collapse of an autocracy. The Sunday Times has discovered a cache of personal emails from Paul Bremer, the US diplomat who ran Iraq after the war. The messages to his wife reveal the chaos and infighting behind the scenes. Nick Davis is an academic who sourced the emails and worked with the Sunday Times on their coverage. Nick, welcome to Times Radio. Great to have you on this morning.
Thank you. Are you able to see and hear me sufficiently?
Absolutely. I just want to get the story of your story, because you were actually out at Yale University when you discovered this. I'll ask you about that in just a second, but just remind us who Paul Bremer was exactly.
So, Paul Bremer was sent by George W. Bush in May 2003 to govern Iraq. And what your listeners need to realise is that this was a position of extraordinary authority. He was sent to govern a country which he had never visited before. He was a career diplomat who had been plucked out of retirement in the private sector to engage in this extraordinary act of post-invasion governance. And he had an extraordinarily contentious time there. And it is his cache of documents, which are the ones that feature in the article, which is on the cover of the Sunday Times magazine this morning.
And it gives an absolutely extraordinary insight. And just tell me about how you came across these emails, because there you were, Cambridge graduate doing your master's. You're off to Yale, and you come across it. How exactly? What happened exactly?
So essentially, the problem I had is that there's not very much archival material available about the Iraq War. I rang up the Bush Presidential Library. There was nothing. There was nothing in the archive that houses State Department records. So even when I rang up this library in Yale, and they'd mentioned there was a huge cache of physical documents, that kind of twinged a hunch in my head that made me think, this is strange, I should sort of explore it. But I couldn't have anticipated what I would find, and it was remarkable that they were released, and the candidness of them felt extraordinary. The fact they were sitting in a public library.
Indeed, and your instincts were right. You knew what you had your hands on when you discovered it there. Our journalists have very kindly voiced up some of the correspondence between him and his wife back home when he was dealing with all the chaos of Iraq. Let's hear one now, and you can tell us about it afterwards.
Just heard we may have accidentally shot a reporter out at the Abu Ghraib prison this evening. Not a great way to end the day. We will know more in the morning. Love to all and Minnie. Kiss, kiss, kiss.
I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it? Can you just tell us a little bit about that situation? And extraordinary to have the kind of the personal with the mixture of the absolutely dramatic, chaotic situation on the ground.
Yes. I mean, the person who was killed in that instance was a 43-year-old Palestinian cameraman for Reuters, Mazen Dana. He's not mentioned again in the emails. And I think it's just incredibly stark, the kind of psychological detachment that whether it's a put that is or seem to be an inevitable feature of occupation. I mean, what happened in that particular instance is that Bremer and his team were going out for a dinner, and the violence of occupation hummed along, and they're ultimately shielded from it as the people who governed the country.
Let's hear another one now. This is an email about a strategic dispute with Shia clerics.
Halfway out of the back door and everyone knows it. If we give in again to Grand Ayatollah Sistani, we will lose whatever authority we have over the political process here.
OK, tell me about that situation.
So, in essence, there was a push by the most senior Shia cleric in Iraq, and you have to remember that Iraq is 60% Shia, where you had this Grand Ayatollah saying the US government run by Bremer in Iraq needs to give up their direct political control of the country and hand over to an elected provisional government. Bremer, Bush, Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice, Donald Rumsfeld, all of the Bush administration did not want this. They wanted an appointed provisional government because they worried that they couldn't sufficiently control outcomes through elections. What were they most worried about? They were worried that an elected provisional government wouldn't maintain legal immunity for US troops. And you have to remember that all US troops had all legal immunity from Iraqi law for actions taken there.
Nick,
and there was a huge troop presence.
Nick, just carry on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, so in essence, that was the bedrock of what they were worried about. And Bremer essentially in this letter is opining about how Sistani's pressure might force them to change course.
Nick, it's been really good hearing about how you got your hands on this vital piece of testament, and thank you very much for joining us. Well done with that, and we look forward to letting people read your article in the paper today.
Thank you so much. I hope you find it insightful.
Indeed.
You can read that with your digital subscription at thetimes.com.